Good morning, and welcome to today's webcast, Transform Your Equity Compensation Strategy Through AI. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thank you for viewing our webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters from Moss Adams, Tim Oakes, partner, and Austin Ulfers, senior data scientist. And with that, I will pass it over to Tim to get us started.
Thank you very much, Taylor. First, I want to say a little bit about Moss Adams. I'm really glad you're here for our webcast, and I have some exciting things to talk about and look forward to sharing them with you. But first, Moss Adams, we're a CPA firm, been around for over 100 years, and do a variety of things. And an arm of Moss Adams is the consulting arm, and that's where Austin and I land. And we are in the strategy, technology, and operations team. I've been doing this type of work for 25 years, where I've helped companies optimize their internal systems, and I've really concentrated in on equity and employee equity plans and making them move very smoothly. Today, we get to talk a little bit about AI and around the equity plans. Over my career working with making equity move better, I'm really excited about moving into AI and what AI can bring. And so we're going to show a little bit about that today. Today, we'll give you some basic understanding about AI. We'll talk a little bit about the different types of machine learning and where they can be applicable within the equity space. And then talk about, where AI applications can be applied within a particular area of equity. And then talk about some outside considerations when implementing machine learning and AI. Of course, AI is a broad topic, and this webcast, we're going to kind of give an overview of AI and various aspects of it. We have another webcast coming up next month where we're going to drill in a lot on machine learning. And so we'll touch on that and give you a little bit of taste of that today. But today is about kind of the overview and how to think about it and kind of giving you a little bit of definition about the differences between the different things. Everyone lumps AI all together. And so today, our agenda will drill into machine learning. We'll talk a little bit about what would make a project suitable or not suitable for AI, and give you some specific examples around equity, and then get into some business considerations. So I'm going to hand it off to Austin, who is going to start talking about what is machine learning.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. As Tim just said earlier, I've been with the firm. I'm a senior data scientist. I've been with the firm for a little over 3 years, and today I'm a little excited to kind of walk you through some basic overview of some of the maybe more technical aspects of some of this. We won't get too deep into the weeds, so bear with me, and we'll get going here. So the first section we have here is going to talk a little bit about machine learning as a subject. some of the common terms that you may have heard are artificial intelligence, machine learning, and generative AI. And these are all terms that can kind of be thought of as being encompassed by the artificial intelligence umbrella. So within the artificial intelligence kind of category, you've got machine learning as a subcategory under that, and then generative AI under that. So when someone really says AI or artificial intelligence, what they really mean what they are really referring to can be one of many different things. Maybe some terms you've maybe be familiar with are clustering, forecasting, and classification, all which can fall under the machine learning category. And then some of the things that you may be familiar with on the generative AI side are things like ChatGPT or DALL-E, which is an image generation service. So that's kind of to give some broad understanding and context around what some of these different terms that we'll be using actually mean and where they fall under that umbrella. Awesome. So now we want to talk a little bit about the differences. So machine learning is really, when it comes down to it, all about structural tabular data. So think CSV files, Excel files, database, anything related to a relational database export, all of those things that, you can pull it up in Excel and really kind of see from a column and row basis what the data looks like. All of these types of data that you're working with is really suitable most commonly for machine learning. And on the generative AI side, this is where you kind of get into some of the more abstract data sources. So you might be working with text from maybe internal company documents. You might be working with image-based inputs. You want to generate an image based off an image prompt. And so that type of thing is more tailored to generative AI. So when you think of machine learning, think more just your basic structural Excel data sets, and generative AI being more kind of abstract data sources.
And Austin, with machine learning, we've seen machine learning for years. It's been around, and people have been doing stuff with forecasting and clustering. And I think generative AI, the ChatGPT just, made a big splash in the marketplace, and everyone's like, wow, this is cool. This is so neat. But yeah, it's been around for quite a while, hasn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, machine learning has been around, and to some extent, generative AI and the systems behind these processes as well have been around for over 40 years. And as you said, Tim, they've only recently made a big splash and kind of really become mainstream, at least for everyone in their common day use. And so, as someone who's been studying this stuff since well before this kind of big AI craze has recently developed, it's been interesting and cool to kind of see that become a lot more popular. Awesome. So moving on here, I want to kind of break down machine learning just a little bit more. So machine learning, as we've already discussed, is really more tabular data. And under machine learning, there's two different categories that you may have heard, may not have heard. One is called unsupervised learning, and one is called supervised learning. And the main difference between these two is if you have a data set of some kind that has historical data that you want to predict on future data, then that's basically considered supervised learning. So let's take an example on employee retention, for example. So you have historical information on your different employees over the past many years, and you maybe want to know, what's the likelihood that someone may be leaving or leaving your company. You have some historical data to just know, okay, this person didn't seem super happy in their role. They may have been. You've got a bunch of different attributes and data assigned to what maybe previously happened, and you can use all of that historical context to really do a training process through an AI model and generate a supervised learning approach that will allow you to then, potentially predict, if current employees would maybe be looking to leave your company. So kind of examples like that, where supervised is really all about taking historical data and applying it to either current or future data. And unsupervised is you're really just looking at the context of the data set that you might be looking at. So one example for that is, participant segmentation. So you really might want to know, like, okay, I've got my participant class here. I've got my entire all the people that are existing in in a participant setting, and you might want to know the different groupings that are associated with those people, and that's where you might want to use unsupervised learning, where you want to cluster that type of information together. That might segment it out by experience level. It might it might segment it out towards the different type of awards that one different employees might be receiving. So there's different ways that segmentation can be performed, but the main thing to take away is that unsupervised learning is really within the context of your current environment, and then supervised learning is really all about applying historical context into current and future current and future data. So with that, I will move on and talk a little bit about the generative AI use cases. So I won't go through the example of showing a chat interface and all of that, because I think by this point many of us are probably aware of how tools like ChatGPT and other large language models work and exist. But one thing I did want to point out here is that ChatGPT specifically has tools that exist, and they're called plugins that allow you to kind of take on different data sets that might not exist regularly within the ChatGPT environment. So one that I wanted to point out here is that exists if you go to ChatGPT today, is the SEC Edgar Analyst, where you can kind of ask information on anything that you would maybe find in Edgar, and it'll do its best to try and pull in information from that relevant data source and then answer your question based off that data. Again, this is, as you may have all be aware, generative AI is not something that's going to be right 100% of the time. So it's always important to fact check and really maybe go back and confirm what it's saying is true, but it's definitely a tool that you can use to help get started. Obviously, some other use cases are PowerPoint content, writing emails, all that type of stuff. And then Tim, I know you wanted to jump in here.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, and using ChatGPT or one of the other things is a lot of fun. You should try it if you haven't tried it already. But yeah, Austin, I think like you're saying, you've seen a lot of things about the errors it makes. Some simple math errors or counting letters in a word, things like that. But Austin, would you kind of say this SEC Edgar Analyst plugin, is it kind of like giving it a college course on it? Giving it's almost like taking it to school and making it smarter about it, where it wouldn't have known before. Is that kind of what's going on there?
Yeah, that's pretty close. I think it may be better described as like giving someone who is college educated the ability to immediately access the available information. So, if you think of ChatGPT as maybe being like a generalist per se, then these plugins might be kind of a little more of a specialist. They might have a little more recent context around the exact data that you're wanting to refer to. So it's definitely, that they'll make mistakes and stuff, but it's definitely that's the right general idea, that they're a little more specialized in that area.
Excellent. Yeah, and I really like the ChatGPT, and I know companies are actually bringing in a version of ChatGPT or something similar inside their firewall so that they can put their protected data in it as well. We all have heard about stuff you put in the one out on the internet. You might end up sharing that with other people, and so you have to be very careful what you're putting in there. But I use ChatGPT, and I use our Moss Adams GPT quite a bit to help me clarify my emails. You think you have the message right, and it can come along and make it a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and let's talk about some indicators for suitable AI projects within the equity space. And so there's one thing is about the volume of data. The machine learning really works best if it has a lot of data to work with. So some ideas are employee populations, the annual awards, the quarterly or monthly awards, the higher awards, some exercises or lapses. So the more data you have, the better machine learning can pull out patterns and find weird things or learn better from stuff. The next piece is that what the process is. It a time-consuming process? And so something that might take a human a long time to do something, the machine learning can do quite quickly. For instance, looking around mobility changes, or doing some compliance reporting, or doing demographic validation. So now you can see, like, when we have a large population of employees that are in the equity plan, let's say 20,000, and you want to look for weird demographic information, you could put it into machine learning, and it could come out and spit out, hey, this person's state doesn't look right compared to their country, or maybe there's some other information. And so it can do things along those lines. The next one is around repetitive tasks. Of course, if it's a one-off, you might get some help out of it. But if you're doing something like the quarterly vest, or you have a on-hire grants that happen on a regular cadence, or you want to do the demographic validation on a regular cadence, then those are great for machine learning. You get this optimized, get this set up, and then you can run it repeatedly, and you get more value each time you use it. And then looking for patterns. And so pattern identification. So for instance, looking around the leave of absences, or the terminations, or the rehires, or the tax setup. So things where there's patterns of things that happen, and you can actually, the AI can go through, the machine learning AI can go through and group these together and find weird situations. Of course, a lot of the leave of absence look very similar. And so it's quick about going through and finding oddities, something that would take a person quite a bit of time to work through. I'm sure that all of us have loaded Excel spreadsheets full of data, and then we're kind of slicing, dicing, and filtering, trying to find the weird things and making sure that everything looks right. So I'm going to pass it on to Austin about some examples.
I think first we've got a polling question.
Oh, yeah, we do have a polling question first. So let's move on to the polling question. So what do you think? How much time do you think stock administrators spend answering equity-specific employee questions? Is it a significant portion of their job? Is it limited, or typically another tool or team is responsible for doing it? None, or everyone is self-sufficient with internal FAQs and wikis? Yeah, that's probably. Or we do have a D, other, unsure, or not applicable. And so how much sitting there, you have your day job, and then of course you have an email queue where you're looking at the employees coming in and asking some specific things. And sometimes this happens around, a vest event or other things where you get more activity. I see the answers are ticking in, so I'll just give a little bit more time to go ahead and let a few more people respond. Need to play the music from Jeopardy right about now, but okay, just a few more seconds. So we're still getting some more people in. Okay, it seems like it stopped now. So let's see what the survey says. Significant portion of their job, 42%. Wow, spend a lot of time doing that. And then almost even another tool or team is responsible for this. Yeah, I know a lot of companies have a help desk function, and they educate them or have some documents to help them answer equity-specific questions. Thank you very much for answering the poll. It'll be relevant in just a moment. And so moving on. So I guess I'm not handing it off to you, Austin, just yet. So the reason why we asked that question is there are a number of companies are now starting to use large language models, such as ChatGPT, to help with the support. And so either for HR or the equity. And so there is the ability of creating a specific ChatGPT instance that is loaded with information specific about your plan and about how your plan works. And that can potentially answer better questions or give more consistent answers. The nice thing also is that it is good about sometimes when you have outsource this to a help desk function, if the question the employee is asking doesn't exactly match an FAQ, the help desk might get stymied on what are they really trying to ask and not find it, where a large language model usually can interpret those questions better and find the correct answer. And so, yeah, like the survey said, you do end up spending a lot of your time responding to and resolving employee questions. And I covered most of the rest of this already. And so, yeah, I know several companies are looking at it right now. There are some other resources that we provide. We're not going to get deep into those large language models today. But some issues around this that this would solve is if you have a large company that has a large volume of questions, this might be a good way to answer them. Of course, answering every individual employee question can be very time consuming. Sometimes, your help desk function might have answers for the most typical questions, but they might get lost on the one-off. And so the large language model is really good at that. And of course, freeing up your time, if you're spending 40% of your time, or spending a significant amount of your time doing questions, you might be able to use your time better somewhere else. And then this solution would, of course, scale with the company. And as you add more employees, it's not worried about adding one more person to the stock team in order to answer the questions. The technology would do it for you. And then, of course, you see the same questions over and over again, and people just a little bit different. And machine learning, the large language model, is really great for that.
And one more thing too on that previous slide as well is, if you kind of recall back to what we were talking a little bit earlier about the indicators for suitable AI projects, you'll see a lot of those similar type things here as well. You've got the high volume, you got the time consuming processes, repetitive nature. So you can really kind of start to see if you can take those 4 indicators and really start to think, okay, what processes do I have that contains these types of features, or that just kind of have this these criteria, then you can really start to apply these methods a lot easier. And so this is really one area where I just wanted to point out that that's suitable. So go ahead, Tim.
Excellent. And then you can put in a model where having a chatbot with a large language model behind it is the front line, the first point of contact. And then either if it's very assured of its answer, it could go ahead and answer it back to the employee, or it could put together the response and hand it off to someone for a review and let them then forward the response if they agree with what the response is. If the large language model chatbot is not quite as certain about the answer. Austin, anything you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah. The one thing that I'll add is that kind of, if you recall back to kind of the SEC Edgar example plugin that you have for ChatGPT, for example, you can create similar plugins for your internal chatbots that use company wiki documents, FAQs, policy documents, all those types of things, as kind of a specialist for your company. So that's really where you get the power out of these language models, is when you support them with your internal documents, and then when employees ask questions about, oh, why is this the case, it'll answer with your company specific information. So that's really where we see the benefit coming in.
And Austin, that brings up another risk. If you don't have this, or if you don't have a really robust support system, your employees might be going out to ChatGPT and asking about it. And we've actually heard from some people where the employee came in and go, well, I'm supposed to be eligible because I went to ChatGPT and I asked when I'm eligible for my ESPP, and it said I'm going to be eligible. And so even if you don't have it, your employees might be going out and getting misinformation from something out on the internet through one of the chatbots. So some benefits of thinking about implementing something like this, of course, better employee experience. You can serve more people. They don't have to go through the pre-existing FAQs. The large language model kind of does that for them. It will understand and be able to put things into a nice language output for them. It's very consistent answers based on what you provide it. And so then you're getting a really good communication to your employees. And then, of course, it's very scalable. And so as your company grows, it will keep up with it. Anything you wanted to add here, Austin?
No, I think between all the issue slides and the benefits, I think we've covered this.
Very good. Well, we're going to move on to another poll. And so here we go. So we are going to kind of change our direction now, and we're talking about pre-vest and catching errors. And so does your company currently perform a pre-vest process to catch potential share and tax errors? Yes, we do it every time. Yes, but only for large vest cycles. No, but we perform post-vest audits, also known as payroll reports or employee error reports, or D, other, unsure, or not applicable. And so I see the answers are starting to pour in, and so we'll give it a little bit of time. Yeah, and I know that for some companies, you have a quarterly vest and maybe it's very manageable, and some people, some companies are able to get an Excel export of the vest information, and I've seen some stock admins, kind of slice and dice that information and look for, oh, did everyone get a California SDI, or does everyone have some kind of tax set up or something like that? And so for some people, it's very simple, and as the company grows, it can get more complex. And so it's something that I know a lot of companies are interested in and concerned about. Our answers have kind of slowed down, and so maybe we'll go ahead and show the results of the poll. Okay, thank you. Got one more in. And now here we go. So no, unsure, other, not applicable. Yes, every time, great, 25%. Yes, but only for large vest cycles. Yeah, some companies, the way their leave of absence policy or their on-hire grants, you might have one-off vests that just happen. You might have one day where you have 5 vests, but then you have your large vest cycles. And so, and then 7%, no, we don't do it at all. Well, let's move on and talk about how machine learning might be able to help here. Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And I think that polling question was good too, because I think, I wish we maybe had a little breakout between the no and the other versus, for that last one. But, I think the pre-vest process is one we've seen, when implemented, be very successful for companies, to help prevent errors that could occur in the vesting cycle. So I'm going to go through a little bit and talk about a specific example that we've seen at a client that kind of caused some headache for them and financial impact, and how machine learning could be implemented in order to help prevent that headache and implement a process going forward to reduce costs and loss in this area. So, as we all know, these stock administration teams are responsible for making sure that these vests happen accurately with the right information, and the employee gets taxed appropriately. And so there's with large amounts of vests, or with large amounts of employees in a certain vest, there can be errors with, we've seen with things like mobility and just different taxation rules, and especially if you're potentially switching broker systems. All these things can cause headaches around just errors between different systems. So if I move on to the next slide here, I'll talk a little bit about our specific example. So in one instance that we saw, there was an HR upstream data entry error. So essentially the HRIS system that was upstream of the stock administration team, there was a change of date, or sorry, a change of address. And in this example, there was the HR people who did the data entry changed the address, but they forgot to change the state code. And so this is something that, this was a valid state code when it showed up in the stock administration team's team to review. But when it actually went time to calculate all of the tax information, the actual state that got pulled in for the tax information was different than where the employee actually ended up living. And so this obviously, caused the employee to be taxed an incorrect amount. And the actual efforts that had to go through to appropriately compensate the employee was involving, obviously the employee was the one to notice the error. So you've got some lack of trust from an employee perspective, once they go through that. But the actual part that ended up costing them was having to repurchase shares on the open market. And since they had done this event, their share price had increased, so they had to, obviously pay more than what they originally would have for this error that happened. And this is just one example of an error that we've seen. Obviously, there's many types of errors around and this whole process. And I don't know, Tim, if you want to jump in and maybe talk about some of those other common ones that we've seen too.
Absolutely. And I've helped a lot of companies come up with some automated ways to deal with a pre-vest audit, a pre-lapse audit. The problem is it's a little bit like driving by looking in your rearview mirror. You know where some of the errors are, and you're looking for those in the future. And so we were able to put together a whole list of, you know what? Make sure everyone has taxes calculated. Make sure that the people in California have a California SDI or SUI, or and so all the places where people have stubbed their toe before, we could put some rules around it, and we would code something in, and of course it's technology, so it takes a little bit of time to get implemented, but it was a good way to do it. And so whether you're looking at, the tax amount calculated, or whether this person really should be getting the vest at all, maybe they're terminated, or maybe there's some other reasons why they shouldn't be getting the vest. And so there's a number of things that we put in as checks, but all of this is a little bit of driving by looking in your rearview mirror, or you have to trip on it once and have an impact like this. And it's like, okay, we're never going to do that again. But Austin, what can we do to kind of predict our errors ahead of time?
Great segue, Tim. Thank you. Yeah, so we kind of took this problem of, how do we not only identify errors that happened in the past, but also be able to predict and find errors that might not yet have happened. And so that's kind of where machine learning can come in. For this process, we use an unsupervised machine learning model, which essentially just clusters data together in order to find outliers and anomalies that exist within data sets. So where, after you've gone through potentially your pre-vest checklist or your original audit, you can run machine learning on that data in order to find where do certain data points, not necessarily look like other data points, where you can kind of find clusters. And kind of what we've witnessed is a lot of these clusters have to do with either states or country locations, because obviously the tax information is really dependent on the jurisdiction. So that's kind of where we've seen the majority of clusters together. But on some examples we've seen, like if there's a cluster of California records in one area, there might be the error record or the anomaly or outlier might be a Washington record somewhere in that cluster, right? There could be there's other errors that are around that whole, it's all about the tax information and everything. But essentially what we can do is we can use this technology and this machine learning to to find these anomalies that potentially are new or these errors haven't come across and we haven't tripped over them quite yet. And we've actually performed this for a client on a vest where they had a little under 25,000 lapses. This technique was able to find 30 outliers that we flagged for review. And 28 of those 30 actually contained erroneous records that would have caused errors and financial impact to the client. And so we are able to do this before their vest occurred. And by implementing this for them, they were able to create more business rules and create more checks around these specific errors that occurred in order to, no longer be able to trip on them and going forward. So this was really an eye-opening moment for us to really see that, this can really be looked, instead of looking in the rearview mirror, you're looking through the windshield, right? You're looking at what's upcoming. And so that's kind of where this can kind of come in handy. Any other comments around that, Tim, or?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. And we're going to drill into it in more detail in our next webcast in November, but this is giving you a preview of it. And we're mixing our knowledge of working with equity plans along with the machine learning to come up with a good way for it to figure out the clusters. And so there's a little bit of art mixed with the science here that you have to work with. And but it's so neat when you see this work, and I'm really looking forward to showing it in more detail at another time.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So then obviously we've kind of a little bit talked about the benefits already, but the benefits that I'll just explicitly say here are, the errors are identified way ahead of the financial impact. You've gained that trust in the employee experience when they don't have to come to you or come to the HR team with the incorrect tax or share information. The analysis itself is relatively low effort and cost. Provides meaningful analysis even with a single data set, and it can augment existing business processes, and the required load for the stock administration teams is really low because it's really on us or whatever to actually run this analysis. So they just have to worry about investigating the actual flagged anomalies. So that's some of the benefits that we've seen. So with that,
yeah, and I think the other piece of that, and also, with the move to T+1 instead of T2, T3, everything is compressed. And so anything you can do to check your pre-vest faster in order to meet your timing is, anything you can do to make that more efficient is a big help for yourself.
Yeah. Great. And that'll take us to our third and final polling question. So how mature is your stock administration process? And this can kind of, interpret this however you'd like to, but you could say incredibly well established and well oiled, very few errors occur. Efficient, but room for improvement. Errors occasionally occur. New or needs severe assistance. Errors are common. And then the last one, other, unsure, not applicable.
Yeah, and Austin, what we find is, of course, companies soon after IPO, they're still trying to figure out how to work with the public market and how to get into the cadence of actually doing releases or dealing with exercises. But then after they have a few under their belt, they start putting together procedures and things to make sure that they're doing it well. Of course, then they might have a change. They might have, now we're doing performance shares, or we're doing a choice program or something like that. And so companies kind of have to invent themselves as they go along. And so, yeah, it's as the company life goes along, you see changes as you mature, or as programs change.
Great.
Okay, it looks like we've gotten quite a bit of responses. It looks like it's kind of frozen now. So let's go on to the results. So 11% incredibly well established and well oiled, very few errors occur. 42% efficient, but room for improvement. Errors occasionally occur. 7% needs new or needs severe assistance. Errors common. And then other. Yep, very good. Okay. So we're coming to the end, kind of wrapping up the presentation. So some things to remember about when you're thinking about AI in all parts of the AI. Make sure you're thinking about the data privacy and security. Make sure your company has a policy around that. You can, if you're using like a generative AI or other things, you can balance your model and go closer to explainability or accuracy. It just depends on what you're trying to do with the business. All of this is going to take some time and money and resources to really make it a good success. And then you have to have the mix. You can't just throw people with the technology. You also have to have the mix of the business in order to be very successful. And we suggest, integrating the machine learning into the existing business processes and workflow. It's going to need to fit into your process, your daily process. And there's always a risk, when you're using a generative AI or you're using machine learning, there is a possibility of false positives. So always have something as that double check to make sure you trust the response.
Yeah.
And so didn't look like we had any questions throughout. If you wanted to throw some questions in there, you can. You can, of course, email myself or Austin at any point, and we would love to hear from you if you wanted more information or you had a specific question that we didn't cover. Like we said before a few times, is that we do have another webcast coming up next month where we're going to drill into machine learning and the outlier stuff in more detail, and that'll be very interesting as well. Hopefully you found this helpful and a good baseline or foundation to help you understand exactly what people are talking about when they're talking about AI. Austin, did you have any wrap-up stuff you'd like to say?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you, Tim.
Excellent.
Thank you, Tim and Austin, for a great presentation today. If we didn't have time to answer your questions, we will do our best to follow up with you after the webcast. Here's a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete this survey, as your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next time.